Ferrari flying, McLaren marching, but who will boss in Barcelona? Welcome to the Grid Talk podcast, where we will be previewing this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona. I'm your host, Tom Horrox, and today I am joined by fellow Grid Talk host Owain Medford.
Hello.
And Grip Strip Pod's Phillip Matthew.
Hello.
Be sure to follow us on social media at Grid Talk UK. And if you're feeling extra generous, please consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind the scenes content. So we're going to dive straight into it today then. We're going to start with you, Owain, but we're going to have a bit of a round table on this one. Tech directives coming in this weekend, finally. 9 races in. What are they? What will they affect? And who do we think it will affect most?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a raft of them already. I think before Imola, where we had changes to the skid block and plank locations and things like that, and their mounting points. But you know, this one's been on the cards for quite a while, and it's the increased stringency of the front wing load tests. Interesting, I know. But it actually could have quite a lot of impact on the cars. We've had the rear wing test that didn't seem to sort of affect McLaren too much. Well, it hasn't, because they're still top of the tree. And now we're going back to the front. So these were introduced right at the beginning of the season, but you know, they're coming into effect. I believe, or was it round 9 that we're at? For Catalunya, which is interesting in some ways, just because it's a much more of a chassis-orientated track than we've had, previous sort of rounds so far. What's actually changing is that the flex that is allowed, obviously parts on the cars are not, aerodynamic loaded parts are not infinitely stiff, and if they were, they would break. So that there's allowed deflection that's mandated by the FIA, and under a given load, I can't remember what it is, but under a given load, they're currently allowed, or at least they were up until Monaco, 15 millimeters of flex, and that will then change. It'll be a reduction by 33%, or 1/3 to 10 millimeters of flex, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but assuming the spec of the wing changes the same, that has quite wide-reaching implications for the team. So essentially what that means is that as much as you've got a third less deflection, what you've got to remember is that the aerodynamic lift squares with speed, so it's quite difficult for the teams if they're using exactly the same spec of wing. They would potentially have to run at lower angles of attack of the wing, so less wing angle. That's unlikely, I think, that they would do that. I think that the teams, it's a good place. Then I imagine they would have introduced them probably for when we were at Imola, just because it's the first European round of the season. But they've got a couple of rounds to get it in before they bring it to Spain. But bring a new spec of wing, and what they'll have done there is they'll have changed the layup of the carbon fiber. So if you layer it in different ways with the lattice interleaved differently, it changes the way in which the wing flexes. So you'd either make it stronger, or you'd either make it stronger so it's less likely to flex, or so that it kind of flexes in a different way, because the teams know where the FIA are going to put the masses that they use, because obviously they can only test them while stationary. But what it does have the potential to do is that then changes the flow all the way down the car. That's what the front wing is for. Instead of just lift, it's both balance and setting up the airflow structures all the way down the car. And that's where the real issues could come for the teams. If they can't get the wings at certain points, at certain speeds into the right areas, and move vortices where they need to stall certain parts of the diffuser and things. So for example, in a very fast corner where you've got more load than you need, more downforce than you need, or on a straight, that's where it could particularly impact the teams.
That's very, very well put there. Thank you. That's in far more detail than I was expecting, but it's really fascinating to hear. So thank you very much for that insight. And Phil, what do you think this is going to do for the teams? Who is it going to affect? Is this going to put McLaren firmly into the midfield, and are we about to see a Haas win?
No, especially on the Haas win part. Even though it was cool to see Ocon up in the top 10 this past weekend, I think this is strictly a Red Bull versus McLaren thing to try and affect McLaren's advantage that they've had for a year plus, first and foremost. I think also with Ferrari running last year's spec at Monaco, saw them actually look halfway decent. Will they actually continue to do that this coming weekend with the new technical directives, or will they go with the 2025 spec, which may or may not benefit from that? Have no idea. I'm curious more in terms of the midfield battle, because I think McLaren will be fine. They've had all this time to prepare for it, and they have the best. They have the best of in a lot of areas right now. Verstappen is doing his usual stuff, and he's going to be up there no matter what. The midfield battle with the likes of Williams, RB, and the others, Haas and Aston and whatever, Sauber and all the other ones. That's where I think there might be some opportunities on the fringe point scoring. Williams, of course, theoretically not developing their car anymore. So that might actually make the fringe points get affected depending on the races here. I mean, we're running out here until the summer break over this next couple of months. And I think we're going to see whatever we've seen so far kind of continue. And then there might be a switch once we come back from summer break a little bit. But the long story short, I don't see much of a change amongst the pecking order. We're in round 9 of the season. We kind of know what everybody has at this point. There isn't going to be a miraculous shift. It doesn't happen very often in Formula One. So, and I doubt it's going to happen in a year where with the cost cap, they're trying to make a new car. So, maybe we'll see. Maybe Aston Martin actually has a car that's functional now, but I doubt it in that case too.
Yeah, it's so difficult to say. I mean, the smallest performance swing could have huge repercussions as things are so tight. I mean, this year, the race just gone, pole was separated by just over a tenth, and that was the biggest qualifying gap all season. So I, for one, think it's going to be, if it does have the tiniest little swing, if it just knocks one team just out of their window, I think it could sway things, because yes, there is a big gap in the Constructors' Championship, but the Drivers' Championship is so tight. We're looking at 25 points between first and third, and then you've just got, it's fair way back to George Russell and Charles Leclerc, but given that we're only just a third of the way through the season, there could still be a bit of a swing there. But moving on to you now, Owain. So possibly the final Grand Prix in Catalonia. That's not been officially confirmed, although we have been confirmed of a new venue starting next year, which we'll come on to in a bit. But looking back at Catalonia, what's your best memories of this race and your favourite races? Take us on a trip down memory lane.
I think sort of my favourite memories of it have got to be, the kind of the years of Catalonia where we had actually, arguably the worst looking F1 cars, with the sort of the 2010 to 2013 era cars, where we had Pastor Maldonado winning in a Williams. We had, what was it? I think, a year later. A year later, we had Fernando Alonso going around the outside, terrible qualifying, and then, overtaking, 5 people, towards the end of the first lap. But it's probably got to be, I think it's the 2021 Grand Prix, when we had Mercedes and Red Bull sort of going at it, obviously, for the championship, and Mercedes pulling that 2-stop, similar to how they had in 2019 in Hungary, and just really taking Red Bull out for lunch just on the strategy, and really pushing them into a really difficult position, to the point where they couldn't compete and had to box with tyres and basically cede the Grand Prix to Mercedes. That's probably my favourite memory. I think one of the most exciting races we've seen around Catalonia.
Phil, anything to raise on that one?
I mean, I think the classic highlight of Catalonia is 1991, when Senna and Mansell were driving down the front straightaway, with the titanium skids going off on the McLaren and the Williams, when Mansell ended up passing Senna for that victory. I think that was the iconic moment in terms of Formula One there. There have been races that, the Maldonado one was a big shock. There's been other ones. I think Max's first win was there. So you think about now how many 65 wins and all the championships and all this other stuff, but it started there 9 years ago. So there had been moments, of course, Alonso being able to win at home. It's definitely a better motorcycle track, but then most tracks in Spain and Italy are, minus Monza, which Monza was always meant for cars. So other than that, so I'll take it or leave it. It's a better GT3 circuit, I would say. There's more opportunities based on the kind of cars, just the weight of the cars, to be able to make more passing happen there. The alterations to the track that they made as well towards the cars versus the motorcycles was also not great. But we'll see what happens with that. We're getting to the point now where it seems like there's going to be a rotation of races from what it sounds like. So there's a possibility that Barcelona might still end up being around. It just won't be every year.
Yeah, there's many things like with Barcelona. It was always just a bit of a bore fest. Like through my early fandom of Formula One, it was never really a great circuit for racing and overtaking. It was always very difficult to overtake. But for me, the standout memory for Barcelona was Michael Schumacher's first win in Ferrari, 1996, driving that armchair around in torrential rain and winning for Ferrari for the first time. I was not cheering for Michael Schumacher on that day, but when I think of Barcelona, that's what I think of. And it's frustrating that it's at least dropping into a rotation at the very best now, when they seem to have finally fixed it. And they got rid of that Mickey Mouse chicane, which was the one of the worst corners in Formula One, and made it so it actually had a decent end to the lap, which then set up the overtakes into turn one and made it a much more viable racing circuit. It wasn't ever perfect, but now it seems like it's finally fallen out of favor after years of being the darling of Formula One for what seems like no reason whatsoever, because it was terrible. But now it seems to be okay, and we seem to be losing it. But it looks like we're going to be moving to the aptly named Madring, or Mad Ring, as some of you may know. If you haven't had a chance to look at the onboard yet, go onto YouTube or other streaming sites are available. Just go onto your search engine of choice and search for the onboard from the Madring, and it looks insane. I'm sure you agree with this, but I'm going to stick with you, Phil, for this one. Do you think that this is a financially backed decision, or is it a good move to move to the Mad Ring, given what we've already said about Barcelona?
With everything that seems to go on in current day Formula One, it is a financially based decision. The track is insane looking, like you said, Tom. It's become a thing now where we're either driving around street circuits in big cities with Formula One, because everyone needs to have Singapore. But then there's a reason why Singapore is so unique. That's one thing they seem to be chasing. Or you're making tracks in the middle of nowhere or in parking lots like they have at Miami. I don't know. It's whatever to me. You get another street circuit that nobody really cares about. Spain is more geared towards motorcycle racing, always has been, even with two Spanish drivers in the field. And then you have other drivers that are Spanish speaking. It's more of a money grab. The track itself is take it or leave it. It kind of reminds me, it's got similar vibes to Jeddah, except less insane, I guess. But, whatever. To me, we've lost the plot a long time ago in terms of Formula One actually going to actual circuits that people appreciate and there's history. And now it's like they're going closer to Formula E, and Formula E is going the other way, where they're going to actual permanent road courses, which seems backwards to me.
Yeah, this isn't a Formula E podcast, but it does seem weird that they seem to be looking at permanent race circuits when that's always been very much against their mantra. But there we go. And there are other Formula E podcasts you can go to listen to. But we'll just look at this weekend's for the Formula One then, Owain. Looking ahead to this weekend, McLaren lead in the Constructors' Championship by 172 points, I think is the last time I checked. Drivers, though, they're only separated by 3 points. 3 points there. So Lando Norris 3 points behind Oscar Piastri. So the title is still very much open, and Max Verstappen only one race win behind. How are they going to fare this weekend? Do you think the tech directive is going to throw them into midfield's mediocrity? Are they going to take the eye off the ball? Is it going to be the two drivers taking points off each other this weekend, or is it going to be a team game?
So what we normally see in Catalonia is, because the teams know it so well, is them lining up 2 by 2. We haven't had pre-season testing here this year, but the circuit is so well known to the teams that I don't think we're going to get anything other than probably a McLaren 1-2, when it comes to qualifying, and then probably the race as well. I don't think the tech directive will have affected them. It's not like I don't think I think McLaren's sorted enough to be able to deal with this tech directive. I think that they've brought in whatever changes they need to already, and I don't think it's going to cause that much of an issue. I think McLaren very clearly have some of the best tyre wear, which is very important. As we know, the undercut is powerful in Catalonia, and that's the important part where you can make overtakes. But I think their tyre wear is good enough that they can, they have that little bit in their back pocket. They have that advantage, and they can use that any sort of that difference to sort of make the edge, basically. I don't really see this being anything other than a McLaren 1-2 unless they run into each other, which we've seen teams do in the past, but I think that Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri seem to be at least more cordial in their relationship currently than maybe Mercedes were 9 years ago, and in that way, I think that Max Verstappen is unlikely to profit off of something like that this time. Of course, I could be wrong, but I don't think, all things being as they should be, that McLaren are going to do particularly badly, bearing in mind that their car seems also quite suited to the track. It's medium and high speed corners at this point, and that does seem to suit them. They've been running well at almost every single track that we've been to. In fact, all of them, bar that 9th place finish for Oscar Piastri, they've not finished outside the top 5. So I genuinely think that McLaren are going to have another great weekend, and I don't think they're going to be infected by this tech directive. I think they're smart enough to get around that, and I don't think it's going to cause that much of a change. I think it's a bit sort of smoke and mirrors, really, that it's going to cause an issue.
I like that a lot. Let's hope for that. I personally think it is going to affect them because this tech directive is aimed at McLaren, let's be honest, and it's been the brainchild of Christian Horner. So I think it's definitely going to benefit Red Bull more than McLaren. But I'm not saying I think they'll still be fast. I think they'll still be at least on a par with Red Bull. So it's then just down to operational, I suppose. But if you have enjoyed this podcast and you continue to enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could just take 5 minutes to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you are listening and currently not subscribed to the channel, please consider helping us out with a like and subscribe. So we're going to move on to, we're going to jump around the field a little bit now, because we're going to talk about RB next, or Visa Cash App Racing Balls, whatever you want to call them. Double points in the last race, throws them into 7th in the championship. Lawson finally gets that monkey off his back. Hadjar leaps from 14th to 10th in the drivers' championship. So can we see, with this tech directive coming in, can we see them start to move forwards, having been really quite poor for the first part of the season, and with a much simpler, easier car to drive? Are we going to see them moving forwards? How are they going to get on this weekend?
I mean, I think fringe points for them is what they're looking at. I mean, Hadjar Hadja, as Crofty calls him, he gets rid of the R. They're gonna be able to qualify. They might have a chance at Q3. Fringe points Lawson I don't think, has gotten anywhere. He's going to take a long time for him to get his confidence back after all the nonsense that's gone on this last year. I think for Hadjar, that's where you're going to have to look for any type of real performance. He did a great job this past weekend at Monaco, and then they had a great strategy, but you're not going to be able to employ that kind of strategy anywhere else. So I think aiming for like 8th place is where they're trying to aim for, get a couple of points, keep on adding to that total, and go from there. That's really what the goal should be. I mean, Q3 appearance, possibly, definitely getting both cars into Q2, and small and steady progress, because I think their aim, just like a lot of teams, is looking towards next year.
No, it's fair point. But sticking with the midfield teams, Owain, we're going to talk about Mercedes next, coming off the back of their terrible Monaco. They do have an incredible record in Barcelona, though. Do you see that continuing this weekend? And was last weekend just a blip and some bad luck?
I'd hesitate to call it bad luck. I think they played the strategy really poorly, but I would say that I think that Mercedes, you say in the midfield, they're second in the constructors. I mean, I know it's not by a long way. Oh, sorry, I know it's by a long way, but they are still second. I
was being very tongue in cheek there. I apologise.
Gotcha. I did not come across. I think they've been trending downwards a smidge, but I do think that, and to be honest with you, I think they've had a couple of poor weekends on the bounce. But otherwise, I think that they seem to be okay, and it's usually this sort of stage in the season. When we come back to kind of I would say more conventional than the previous circuits. Bahrain and Japan sort of excluded. We kind of now come to what racing, what racing tracks sort of normally are, and that seems to be, as you say, where Mercedes kind of excel. I think the car looks reasonably sorted, and they've been doing okay with it. As I say, they've had a couple of poor weekends, but they do seem to be in the habit of just picking up a decent amount of points here and there, and making sure that Russell doesn't generally finish outside the top 10. Obviously, he's been much closer, hitting top 3. I don't know if the performance is sort of slipping away from them, but I can see them going fairly well. They seem to be able to run the car a bit lower than anyone else. I think that's kind of come to be a point in contention with at least some drivers this season. But I think they're finally getting on top of it, and I foresee a fairly decent performance for Mercedes. I don't think it's going to be setting the world to light, but I think they're going to at least be a couple of many places up the grid, because they won't crash into barriers or hopefully have any reliability issues that they had last time out. But other than that, I do see them going fairly well around Catalunya.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I mean their performance in Monaco was just so out of character there, completely out of character. But Toto Wolff said after the race that he thought with their strategy, if they'd have qualified where they should have been, they'd have got a 1-2, which would have been insane given how their race actually panned out. One team that definitely will not be getting a 1-2 because they can't seem to get two drivers doing the same thing in that car. Red Bull, Phil, Verstappen, furthest off pole he's been all year in Monaco. Despite leading until lap 78, his pace really wasn't on the same level as McLaren or Ferrari in Monaco, but he's only 25 points off top spot. So are we going to see another one-sided Jekyll and Hyde team from Red Bull this weekend? And how do you see Spain going for them? Is Tsunoda going to be back in the fight?
I think it's the typical thing. I think it's just same as usual. Doesn't matter who you put in that second car. They've had that problem for years, and it's not going to get solved this weekend or any weekend very soon. I hope for Yuki's sake that he can have a nice clean weekend, which would then, I think, lead to a Q3 appearance and also a points finish. We know Verstappen will be in the top 3. He'll be a contender, or top 5, probable contender for pole, and he'll be up there trying to make something happen in the race. with the new changes with the aero, maybe they gain a little bit there, and he has an advantage and puts a little bit of stress on both the McLaren boys. But I think it's going to be more part and parcel for what the majority of the season has been. He's going to stay in the fight the whole way. It's going to be hard to get rid of him because he's a lone wolf, so to speak. No pun intended to Toto Wolff, but it's with Red Bull. They're just what they are, and that's why they win all the time, because they have one great driver and they have one great car, and it's a way that they're able to kind of manage the points too that way, and make McLaren have to work for it because they have this wonderkind behind the wheel and place where he won his first career race, and so good memories for him. We'll see what they can do. I think double points finish is what should be expected every week, but it usually never happens that way. But we'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think we know exactly where Verstappen is going to be, because he's never far away. You see, let's be honest. No matter how bad the car is, he's always close. So wait with bated breath to see how Red Bull are going to do this weekend. But moving on to Ferrari, then, Owain. They shocked a few people this weekend. I mean, I personally, my predictions, I had the Ferraris on the podium. So just a shame that Hamilton got that grid drop, and that put pay to that on my predictions. I remain firmly at the bottom of the table now. But their sudden competitive in Monaco was a bit of a surprise for a lot of people. But faster corners means ride height lifting coming into Barcelona, trying to avoid that plank way. Don't want a repeat of China. Is that going to mean that this was just a flash in the pan for Monaco, or can they maintain their recent form?
I'm not particularly hopeful, I have to say. I think Ferrari obviously have been disqualified in the past, in China during the race for the ride height, and typically they also don't go particularly well. It seems with this car in warmer weather. They seem to be so much better in cooler weather, and I don't think we're forecast cool weather for Spain. I think we're forecast hot weather as far as I remember. It's getting on for, it's been a long, it's been incredibly warm in the UK leading up to this, but it's going to be even hotter in Spain, and I don't think that's gonna see them well. They sort of seem a bit. They seem both sort of have an issue. They both have sort of an issue turning up and getting the setup right. And that causes them problems, and they can't seem to get comfortable with the car or find a way to, to make sure that they're quick right off the bat. They seem a bit poor in qualifying, and so poor enough in qualifying that both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton can't do too much about it, apart from really good lap from Charles in Monaco. But apart from that, I think it's going to be another difficult weekend for them, and they're in the sort of the part of the midfield where they seem to be qualifying low enough that they're having to get into fights, and they can't just get within the opening 3 or 4 cars and pull away with them, or at least be dragged along a little bit. They seem to always be fighting on those that opening stints of laps, and I think that's probably going to happen here with one of the longest runs down to turn 1. They might get a bit swallowed up, so I think it's going to be difficult again, unless they completely blow me away and actually their flexi wing isn't as good as we thought, and it's the tech directive moves the field towards them, but otherwise I don't think it's going to be in Ferrari's favour unless they fix their issues with the high temperature running.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And for the bad season they've had so far, they are 4th in the Constructors' Championship, but they are only 5 points off second place. So it's the old thing of take away McLaren, and we've got an incredible Constructors' Championship going on. It's really, really tight. But one team that definitely are not in the Constructors' Championship battle, Phil, are Williams, but double points out last time. Really strong start. They've scored more points than they have in any season in recent history already. Will they continue to turn in these great performances, or are they going to be turning the taps off and looking at next year?
I mean, from what they've said, they're turning the taps off and looking at next year, but they still seem to perform, and Alex Albon's having a great year so far. The smooth operators joining him more recently, though. His qualifying, which has always been his issue for Carlos Sainz, continues to exist. But I I think for Carlos at home, wanting to do well, he might get a step up in performance there. They have a great car with lower downforce, and there are long straights at Catalunya, so there's that. I think they've performed relatively well at these more balanced circuits in terms of the medium speed and high speed corners. So, I mean, it would be, I think it wouldn't be a surprise to see both of them finish in the second half of the top 10, or one in definitely getting points and one just outside on the periphery. But Albon's been doing great this year. So, and they seem to have a really nice performing car that both guys are able to generally get their hands around, which is a positive sign and proof that you can make a car that can be good for two drivers, unlike certain teams.
Yeah, no, he's definitely made a big difference to that team. Carlos Sainz, he's not too far away from Alex Albon on points. So he's on 12 points to Albon's 42. So that's a fair way off. But he's certainly been doing better in recent weeks. But yeah, slow start. But he's added a lot more to that team than what his points suggest, definitely. But final team we are going to talk about before we get on to our predictions, Owain, are Alpine. Two races in for Franco Colapinto. How is he doing compared to doing it? Is it the experiment working? And are they about to lose a ton of performance? Because they are the team that had to genuinely make changes to their rear wing to try and make the car legal after China. So are they one of the teams that are going to go even further backwards than they already are?
I don't know whether they're going to go further backwards, but it's hard to go much further backwards. They are 1 point off the bottom of the constructors, and they have the most retirements of any team this year so far. I think mostly by running into people rather than necessarily, having reliability issues. Although that's always a worry with the Alpine power unit. I cannot see a way forward for Alpine. They seem a bit also runs. Sometimes it genuinely just does feel like they're there to make up the numbers. And they, to be honest with you, they were quite lucky not to have a double DNF in Monaco, just due to the two cars running into each other. Although not because they were fighting on track. I do wonder about Alpine all the time, and it just seems unfair to rag on them, but if they were having any other kind of luck, they'd have no luck at all. But that's how bad it's been. When it comes to maybe changes around this track, unfortunately, I don't see too much in terms of positives for them. We haven't seen sort of any particular their highest place finish is, well, in fact, their highest place finish, I think, is seventh, and then 1 point in the sprint race that gives them 6 points, and that came back in Bahrain. There's a benefit to Bahrain in that it gives you lots of options with how you go about going through the corner, and there's multiple lines which we haven't had for a while. So it's quite possible that they would actually be able to take advantage of that. But I think everyone else will, and I don't think everyone else's car performance is holding them back in the same way that Alpine's is. So to be honest with you, I don't think they're going to go much better. And regarding the swap between Jack Doohan and Franco Colapinto, he's finishing in the two races he's finished in thus far. He's got 16th and 13th compared to two retirements and 13th, 15th, 14th, and 17th. Averages wise, on average position you're finishing, that's not too different. I'm not going to work it out right now. My biggest issue actually is the length of that. Is the length of that contract they've given Colapinto. Bearing in mind, why would they not take him to the to the 3-week break? They've given him 5 races, and then they've got and then they've got to change driver potentially. I know that that's not on topic, but it is just, I think it's indicative of some of the kind of mismanagement of Alpine from top to bottom that we've been going through right now. But yeah, I don't see anything changing.
Yeah, no, I am tempted to agree, and I do believe that Colapinto is in for the rest of the season. That 5-race contract is just to show doing. No, we're just rotating, and Briatore coming out after race one saying we're already seeing stuff in the data that shows that we made the right decision. Yeah, the stuff in the data you're seeing is the data on your bank balance. So I have no time at all for that operation at the moment. But what we do have time for just before we leave then is our prediction set. So start with you, Phil. What is your prediction for pole position, your podium, and a bold prediction for the weekend?
The pole position, I'm going to say, is Oscar Piastri. My podium will be Piastri, Verstappen, and Norris. Bold prediction will be Nico Hulkenberg gets a 10th place finish.
Nice, fantastic. Like it. I'm liking that bold prediction. I do feel a bit bad for Gabby Bortoleto that is now dropped to 21st in the championship, dropping behind Colapinto, owing to his very lofty 17th place finish or whatever it was. Owain, what's your predictions, please?
My prediction is I'm going to go for pole for Piastri. I think that's going to be a lights to flag win, to be honest with you. I just think that McLaren aren't going to be affected by this tech directive, and I think that they are the class of the field very clearly. And to be honest with you, I think that as we've seen through most of the results this season, when it's come to a McLaren win, it's been Piastri on that top step rather than Norris. I think he's slightly more exciting, and I think that he's a much better racer, to be quite honest, than Norris. Unfortunately, I think Norris is a bit too eager to get the place rather than eager to keep the place, which I think is two completely different things. Yeah, I think Norris will come in second. And then in third, I'm gonna spice it up and once again go for not Red Bull. I think I'm going to go for a bounce back of Russell. I think he's going to continue his thing of just picking up third places. And then my bold prediction is a Williams inside the top 5. I think the circuit suits them, and I think they've got the ability to defend with their straight line speed advantage. And I don't think we're at the point yet where if they are like holding development, that I don't think it's going to impact them too much at this point.
So I'm going to quickly throw mine in. I'm going to be very quick with these ones, but I think you're all wrong about Lando Norris. I think he's I won't get too much into it now, but I think he's every bit the racer of Oscar Piastri. Maybe Oscar has a slight edge on being just razor sharp, but I think he's fixed his qualifying issues now. So I'm going to go for a Lando Norris pole. It's going to be a 1-3 for McLaren with Oscar in third, and Verstappen is going to split the McLarens. And then bold prediction for me is going to be, this is the arrival of Kimi Antonelli. He is going to outperform and outrace George Russell. That's going to be my prediction there. So we're just going to go on to a bit of promo now before we go then. Owain, what do you want to plug? I think I know the answer because it's the same every time.
I don't have anything else to plug. It's our Grid Talk social channels. Yeah, if you'd like to keep up with all things Grid Talk, whether that's announcements of the pod or our predictions championship. So Tom's and I's will, I'm assuming you won't change them and I won't change mine. We'll go into the spreadsheet this week, and then come what may on Sunday, Saturday and Sunday, sorry, we'll find out who collects the most points. At the end of it, because I think we are level, Tom. We're level on fifth.
I didn't know you were that bad.
Wow! Ow, that one hurts. Yeah, no, I am that bad. I think we're on 24 points. We're 9 points away from Tom Downey, who's just slightly walking away with it. I gained 1 point last week, so. But yeah, if you would like to keep up with that and the drama that apparently has just been stoked between Tom and I. Then yeah, make sure you follow all our Grid Talk social channels at Grid Talk UK on all the social media channels with the @.
Fantastic. And Phil, tell us about the GSP.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And the Gripster podcast, yeah, we're on all podcast platforms. You can find us. We're also on YouTube. on my page, GSP1428, and the Grip Strip Podcast YouTube page, where Josh, Hafine, my co-host, uploads all the episodes, the video feeds. I have the audio feeds. You can find the show also at philipgmatthew.com. And then you can follow me at PGMatthew28 on Twitter or PGMGSP28 on Instagram or Blue Sky. And of course, thank you, Tom, and great to be on with you and Owain once again. It's been a while, so glad to be a part of the Grid Talk.
Always great to have you. It's always great to listen to that podcast as well. I hear there was quite a big race this weekend just gone that you might be talking about fairly soon. So definitely
the greatest day in motorsports, people.
Yeah, the Coke 600, of course. Okay, so Grid Talk is available on YouTube as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search for Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews, reactions, and race results as interviews as well. Thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle, as always, for supporting us on Patreon. If you would like to support the show further, why not sign up for Patreon? And there's all kinds of exclusive content you can get there. We've got our own Patreon exclusive podcast that we do there. So it'd be great to get more of you involved in the community. It's just growing at the moment. So please come and join us there. Make sure you subscribe to us so you know when the episodes are first released as well. But we will be back soon with much more F1 content. So look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you and goodbye.